Discover surprising stories and unforgettable moments. Subscribe now to Beyond Fame and find out what happens beyond the spotlight. Have you ever experienced a moment that changed your life in the blink of an eye? For Mina, a 24-year-old waitress working at a small but charming restaurant in Seoul, life was a routine of long shifts, tired feet, and dreams she had almost forgotten. Every day, she served customers with the same polite smile, despite the exhaustion weighing her down. One rainy evening, as the restaurant filled with customers seeking shelter from the cold, a man quietly walked in. He wore a baseball cap and a simple black jacket, keeping his head slightly lowered as he took a seat in the farthest corner of the room. Mina, carrying a tray full of empty plates, noticed him immediately. Unlike other customers who called out impatiently for service, he sat calmly, blending into the background as if he didn't want to be noticed. She approached him with her usual warm professionalism. "Good evening, sir. Welcome. May I take your order?" The man looked up just enough for her to see his features, a familiar face, though she couldn't quite place it. His voice was soft and polite. "Just a bowl of ramen and a cup of tea, please." Mina nodded and quickly jotted down the order, then turned to walk away. But as she did, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had seen him somewhere before. As the night progressed, she noticed something peculiar about him. He barely touched his phone, didn't interact with anyone, and seemed completely at ease in solitude, a rare sight in a city where everyone was always in a rush. When it was time for the bill, Mina returned to his table with a small smile. "Would you like anything else, sir?" The man shook his head. "Just the check, please." She handed him the bill and stepped back, waiting for the usual routine of card swiping or cash counting. But what happened next made her breath catch in her throat. The man slid the check folder back to her, and when she opened it, her eyes widened in shock. Inside was a stack of crisp bills, far exceeding the price of his simple meal. In fact, it was more money than she earned in an entire month. Her hands trembled as she quickly recounted the bills. It wasn't just generous, it was unbelievable. Mina's voice shook as she turned back to him. "Yes, sir. I think there's a mistake." The man simply smiled, standing up as he adjusted his cap. "No mistake. You work hard. You deserve it." Before she could process his words, he gave her a polite nod and began walking toward the exit. Mina's heart pounded as she turned to her coworker, who had just walked up. Her coworker's jaw dropped. "Mina, do you have any idea who that was?" Mina blinked, still clutching the shocking tip in her trembling hands. "Who?" Her coworker's voice came out as a whisper. "That was Kim Soo-hyun." Mina's legs nearly gave out beneath her. Kim Soo-hyun? The famous actor? The man who had just left her a life-changing tip? Her emotions overwhelmed her, and before she knew it, tears started streaming down her face. Mina stood frozen, clutching the bill folder as her hands trembled. Kim Soo-hyun? The world-famous actor? Her coworker nudged her, eyes wide with shock. "Mina, do you know what this means?" But Mina could barely process anything. Her chest tightened, her heartbeat thundered in her ears, and her vision blurred with tears. She had been working tirelessly for so long, struggling to pay rent, sacrificing her dreams for survival. And now, out of nowhere, this happened. A million thoughts ran through her head. Why had he left such a massive tip? Did he notice how exhausted she was? Did he see something in her that no one else had? Her coworker shook her shoulder, snapping her back to reality. "Mina, you have to say something. Are you gonna keep it? Are you gonna post about it?" Mina wiped her tears quickly and took a deep breath. "No," she said firmly. Her coworker looked surprised. "No? What do you mean?" Mina bit her lip, staring at the door where Kim Soo-hyun had just left. "He didn't do this for attention. He didn't even tell me who he was. I think he just wanted to help." Her coworker let out a small laugh. "Are you serious? A superstar just handed you a small fortune, and you don't want to tell the world?" Mina shook her head. "No. This moment is mine. She turned back toward the stack of money in her hands, still struggling to believe it was real. This wasn't just a tip. It was a message. A sign that someone saw her, that someone believed she deserved more. She carefully placed the bills inside her bag and wiped her face, still overwhelmed by emotion. As the restaurant started closing for the night, Mina sat alone in the staff area, staring at her phone. She felt the weight of the night settle over her like a warm blanket. Just then, her phone buzzed. She frowned, unlocking the screen. It was a message from an unknown number. "Unknown, Mina, I hope the tip helps. Keep working hard. You deserve good things." Her breath caught in her throat. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, her mind racing. How did he know her name? How did he get her number? But more than that, why was Kim Soo-hyun messaging her? Her hands trembled as she typed back. "Mina, thank you. I don't know what to say. This means more to me than you can imagine." For a few moments, there was no reply. She figured that was the end of it. But just as she was about to put her phone down, another message popped up. "Kim Soo-hyun, there's something else. Can you meet me tomorrow morning? I have an idea." Mina froze. Meet him? Her heart pounded as she stared at the screen. This wasn't over. It was only the beginning. Mina stared at the message, her mind struggling to comprehend what was happening. Kim Soo-hyun wanted to meet her? Her fingers trembled over the keyboard. 1,000 questions flooded her mind. Why? What could he possibly want to talk about? Was this a mistake? Maybe he regretted giving her the tip. Maybe this was just a dream, and she would wake up to find that nothing had changed. Her coworker peeked over her shoulder and gasped. "Mina, what is that? Why is Kim Soo-hyun texting you?" Mina quickly locked her phone and turned away. I don't know," she stammered, feeling her cheeks burn. Her coworker narrowed her eyes. "You have to go. Are you seriously thinking of ignoring this?" Mina took a deep breath. She had been struggling her whole life, and now, out of nowhere, she was being given a chance at something more. Finally, she typed her response. "Mina, yes. I'll meet you. Where and when?" The reply came instantly. "Kim Soo-hyun, 10 a.m. Grand Seoul Hotel lobby." Mina's heart skipped a beat. The Grand Seoul Hotel? That was one of the most luxurious hotels in the city. She had walked past it countless times, wondering what kind of people stayed there, never imagining she'd ever have a reason to go inside. She set her phone down, exhaling deeply. This was real. And tomorrow, she would find out why Kim Soo-hyun had reached out to her. The next morning, Mina barely slept. Her nerves were on edge, her stomach twisting in knots. She picked out a simple outfit, something professional but not overly formal. By the time she arrived at the Grand Seoul Hotel, it was exactly 9:55 a.m. She hesitated at the entrance, staring at the gleaming marble floors and elegant chandeliers. The people walking in and out looked polished and important, a stark contrast to the tired waitress she had been just yesterday. Before she could turn back, she heard a familiar voice. "You made it." She turned sharply, and her breath caught in her throat. Standing near the lobby, dressed in a tailored suit that made him look even more charismatic, was Kim Soo-hyun. For the first time, she saw him as the world saw him, not as the humble man who had ordered ramen at her restaurant, but as a global superstar. Mina gulped. "Good morning," she managed to say. Kim Soo-hyun smiled. "Come on. Let's talk somewhere private." She nodded and followed him into a quiet lounge area away from the public eye. As they sat down, Mina couldn't hold back her curiosity any longer. "What is this about?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Kim Soo-hyun studied her for a moment before speaking. "Mina, do you know why I left that tip for you?" She shook her head slowly. I just thought you were being generous." He leaned forward slightly. I left it because I see something in you. You work hard. You don't just serve food, you do it with care, with respect. That's rare. Mina's chest tightened. No one had ever told her something like that before. I don't believe in coincidences, he continued. I think people cross paths for a reason. And I think you deserve a chance at something bigger. Mina frowned slightly. A chance at what? Soo-hyun reached into his pocket and pulled out a small white envelope. He slid it across the table toward her. Open it. Mina's fingers trembled as she unfolded the letter inside. The moment her eyes landed on the words, her breath hitched. It was a job offer. A position at a luxury hotel restaurant, one of the most prestigious in the country. Mina's hands covered her mouth. This can't be real. Soo-hyun smiled. It is. I have connections in the industry, and I told them about you. They're willing to give you a chance. Mina's heart pounded. A job like this could change her entire future. She looked up at him, her eyes filled with emotion. Why me? Soo-hyun met her gaze. Because you deserve more than just surviving. Mina felt her throat tighten. For the first time in her life, someone truly believed in her. Mina's hands trembled as she held the letter, her heart racing with disbelief. This wasn't just a job offer, it was an opportunity she had never dared to dream of. She looked up at Soo-hyun, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what to say. He smiled gently. You don't have to say anything yet. Just think about it. Mina's thoughts swirled. Her whole life had been a struggle, filled with exhaustion, low wages, and uncertainty. Now, out of nowhere, she was being offered a chance at something bigger, but could she really do it? She hesitated. What if I'm not good enough? Soo-hyun leaned forward, his gaze steady. You already are. You just need to believe it. Mina swallowed hard. No one had ever told her that before. She exhaled deeply, gripping the letter tighter. If I accept this, when do I start? Soo-hyun's smile widened slightly. Tomorrow. Mina's breath caught in her throat. Tomorrow? That's too soon, I don't even know if I'm ready. The world doesn't wait, Mina, he said calmly. This is your chance. If you want it, you have to be ready. She stared at him, her emotions a whirlwind. Just 24 hours ago, she was a struggling waitress barely making ends meet. Now, she was sitting in a luxury hotel, talking to a global superstar, holding a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity in her hands. She had two choices: stay in the life she had always known or take a risk and chase something greater. Mina clenched her fists, then looked at him with newfound determination. Then, I accept. Soo-hyun nodded approvingly. Good choice. A surge of adrenaline rushed through her veins. This was it. Her life was about to change forever. That evening, Mina sat alone in her tiny apartment, staring at the letter. Tomorrow, she would step into a world she had never been part of before. Would she fit in? Would she be able to handle the pressure? Her phone buzzed. She picked it up and saw a message from an unknown number. Unknown, good evening, Miss Mina. This is Chef Park, head chef at the Grand Seoul Hotel restaurant. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow at 8 a.m. Be on time. Mina's stomach twisted with nerves. She quickly typed a response. Mina, I'll be there. Thank you for the opportunity. As she put down her phone, her hands still shook slightly. She had no idea what awaited her. But for the first time in her life, she wasn't just waiting for things to change, she was taking control of her own future. Tomorrow would be the first step towards something greater. And no matter how hard it got, she wasn't going to quit. The next morning, Mina stood outside the Grand Seoul Hotel restaurant, her heart pounding harder than ever. She had barely slept, running through endless thoughts. Would she be good enough? Would they regret giving her this chance? She exhaled deeply and adjusted her uniform, a simple but professional black and white chef's outfit that she had received upon arriving. She wasn't just a waitress anymore. She was about to step into one of the most prestigious kitchens in the country. Taking a deep breath, she pushed open the heavy doors and entered the bustling kitchen. The moment she stepped inside, she was hit with a wave of heat, the sharp aroma of spices, and the synchronized chaos of chefs moving with precision. At the center of it all stood Chef Park, the head chef. His presence was commanding, his eyes sharp as he surveyed the kitchen like a battlefield. He turned when he noticed her. "You're late," he said sternly. Mina's stomach dropped. She quickly checked the clock, 7:58 a.m. I'm actually early," she said cautiously. Chef Park raised an eyebrow. "Here, early means being in position and ready to work. Next time, arrive before me." Mina swallowed hard and nodded. "Understood, chef." Some of the other chefs smirked, clearly doubting whether she would last. "New trainee," one of them whispered. "Another one who won't last a week," another chuckled. Mina clenched her fists. She wasn't going to let them intimidate her. Chef Park motioned toward a station. "You'll start with prep work. Show me what you can do." Mina rushed to the counter, where a pile of onions, carrots, and herbs were waiting to be chopped. Her first test had begun. She picked up the knife and took a deep breath. She had done this a million times before at her old job, but this was different. She was being watched, judged. Her hands trembled slightly as she started slicing, trying to focus. The room fell silent as some of the chefs stopped to watch. She finished chopping the onions, but before she could move on to the next ingredient, Chef Park stepped in. "Too slow," he said, inspecting her work. "Your technique is clean, but if you can't keep up with the kitchen's pace, you'll be useless here." Mina's stomach twisted, but she refused to let it show. She had to prove herself. "I'll do better, chef," she said, her voice firm. He studied her for a second, then nodded. "Good. Fix it." And just like that, the chefs went back to their work, leaving Mina to her task. Her hands tightened around the knife, and she restarted, this time picking up the pace. She wasn't going to fail. She wasn't going to quit. Because this was her one chance to change her life. And she was ready to fight for it. Mina pushed herself harder, moving faster, her knife slicing through the vegetables with more confidence and precision. The sting of onion filled her eyes, but she didn't stop. The burn in her fingers from the repeated motion was nothing compared to the fire in her heart. She wasn't here to impress anyone. She was here to prove that she belonged. As she placed the freshly chopped ingredients in a neat row, Chef Park walked by and glanced at her station. He didn't say anything, no praise, no criticism. Just a brief nod before moving on. It wasn't much, but Mina knew what it meant. She was improving. The lunch service was about to begin, and the energy in the kitchen shifted. The calm, focused prep time transformed into controlled chaos. Orders came in one after the other, and the chefs worked in perfect rhythm, plating each dish with precision. Mina had never seen anything like it. "New girl, hurry up with the garnish," someone barked. She jumped into action, carefully placing delicate herbs and sauces on each plate before they were rushed out to the dining area. For the first time, she felt like she was part of something bigger. Then, out of nowhere, disaster struck. A loud crash echoed through the kitchen. Mina turned and saw one of the sous chefs staring in horror at the ground, where an entire tray of plated dishes had shattered into pieces. The plates were meant for the VIP section. Silence fell over the kitchen. Chef Park's gaze darkened. Who was responsible for this? The sous chef stammered. I lost my grip, chef, No excuses, Chef Park snapped. "We need those dishes ready again in 5 minutes." Everyone rushed into action, but Mina noticed something, the sous chef's hands were still shaking. He was rattled, unable to focus. Without thinking, she grabbed a fresh plate and started recreating the dish herself. The other chefs looked at her in shock. "You don't know the full recipe," one of them whispered. But Mina did. She had memorized every step, every movement. She had been watching, learning, absorbing everything since the moment she stepped into this kitchen. Her hands moved quickly, mirroring what she had seen. As she placed the final garnish, Chef Park turned toward her. The entire kitchen held its breath. He picked up the plate, inspecting it closely. Then, he set it down in front of the sous chef. "That's how you do it," he said. Mina's heart nearly stopped. Did that mean she passed the test? The sous chef gave her a grateful nod before rushing the plate out. Chef Park turned to Mina. "Not bad," he said. "But don't let it happen again." Mina nodded, hiding her smile. For the first time since she arrived, she felt like she had truly earned her place here. And she wasn't going anywhere. Mina barely had time to process what had just happened before she was thrown back into the fast-paced rhythm of the kitchen. Her body moved on instinct now, chopping, garnishing, assembling plates with precision. The fear and hesitation from earlier had faded. She was in sync with the flow of the restaurant. By the time the last order was sent out, the kitchen finally slowed down, and a wave of exhaustion washed over her. She leaned against the counter, wiping sweat from her forehead. She had made it through her first full day. Chef Park approached her, his sharp gaze unreadable. "You memorized that recipe just by watching," he stated. Mina straightened up. "Yes, chef." A long pause. Then, to her surprise, he let out a small chuckle. "You're full of surprises," he muttered. Mina didn't know if that was a compliment or a warning. "You did well today," he finally said. "But don't get comfortable. You're still a rookie." Mina nodded. "I understand, chef." Chef Park smirked slightly. "Good. Be here at 5 a.m. tomorrow." Her stomach dropped. 5 a.m.? She managed to keep a straight face. "Yes, chef." The other chefs overheard and smirked among themselves. They all knew what 5 a.m. meant. "Looks like she's getting the full training experience," one of them whispered. Mina didn't care. She wasn't going to quit. As she left the kitchen, she pulled out her phone. A message from Kim Soo-hyun was waiting. "Kim Soo-hyun, how was your first day?" Mina smiled as she typed back. "Mina, brutal. But I survived." A few seconds later, another message popped up. "Kim Soo-hyun, good. The hardest paths lead to the best destinations." Mina paused, letting his words sink in. Her body was aching, and tomorrow would be even tougher, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. She exhaled deeply and typed her reply. "Mina, then I'll keep walking this path." Tomorrow, she would wake up before dawn. Tomorrow, she would prove that this wasn't just luck, it was her destiny. The next morning, before the sun had even risen, Mina stood outside the Grand Seoul Hotel restaurant, dressed and ready. Her body ached from the previous day, and the idea of starting again at 5 a.m. seemed insane. But she wasn't going to complain. She had chosen this path, and she was determined to see it through. As she stepped inside, she saw that Chef Park was already there, inspecting ingredients. Without looking up, he said, "You're on time." That's a good start. Mina took her place at her station, ready for whatever came next. Her first task? Learning how to handle premium ingredients, something she had never worked with before. Truffles. Wagyu beef. Imported cheeses. Things she had only seen on TV. She listened carefully as Chef Park explained the importance of every detail, the exact temperature the meat needed to rest at, the perfect way to slice fresh tuna for sashimi, the delicate balance of flavors in a Michelin-level dish. Mina soaked up every word, her hands moving faster, more precisely. She wasn't just following orders anymore, she was learning, adapting, improving. As the day went on, she started gaining the respect of her co-workers. One of the chefs, who had been skeptical of her before, nudged her while preparing a sauce. "Not bad, rookie," he admitted. Mina grinned. That was the best compliment she could have asked for. By the end of her second shift, she was physically drained but mentally stronger. She knew she still had a long way to go, but she also knew something else. She belonged here. That evening, as Mina walked home, she checked her phone again. Another message from Kim Soo-hyun. Kim Soo-hyun, still surviving? Mina chuckled to herself before replying. Mina, barely. But yes. A moment later, his reply came. Kim Soo-hyun, good. Then you're on the right path. Mina stopped walking and looked up at the night sky. A few days ago, she had been just a struggling waitress. Now, she was on a journey she had never imagined possible. All because of one unexpected act of kindness. She took a deep breath, feeling something she hadn't felt in years, hope. Because this wasn't just about a new job. This was a new beginning. If you've made it this far, type new beginnings in the comments.